Hallo und grüezi. Die Amerikaner sind endlich aufgewacht. Donald J. Trump ist die neue Realität und das ist gut so. Die morbide EU und speziell Deutschland verharren im Mottenschrank ihrer herbeifantasierten regel- und wertebasierten Weltordnung. Globalisten Mist gehört auf den Misthaufen der Geschichte. Die Welt dreht sich weiter und die Ampel steht auf Rot. Ich bin verhalten optimistisch, aber zu viel Porzellan wurde zerschlagen. Mein Vertrauen in die elitären Machtstrukturen, die Medien und die supranationalen Organisationen ist gänzlich entschwunden. Ich sehe die Welt mit anderen Augen, ja. Vielen Menschen geht es auch so. Der schottische Nonkonformist Neil Oliver spricht mir aus der Seele und aus dem Herzen.
What will he be able to do, operating as he does in a complicated and dangerous world? So many people have so much riding on his win. Ordinary people, the ordinary people who've been overlooked, set aside, treated with contempt, apparently lined up for some kind of extinction event. Ordinary people are desperate in a way I haven't known before. They're desperate for change. They're desperate to see an end to the wars. They're desperate for peace. Desperate for a reckoning. But also, as Donald Trump has already observed today, desperate for healing. Well, here we are. It's a historic day. I would say. I suppose every U.S. presidential election is historic, given the influence that the United States of America has over the way things are in the rest of the world. And here we are. It's a stonking win for Donald J. Trump. And the United States of America now embarks on a second term with the Donald. So, what's my reaction? I have to say, from the heart, I'm allowing myself some optimism today, some modicum of hope, and I am a glass half empty kind of a guy. So, some optimism and some hope can go a long, long way. More than that, genuinely, honestly, well, the fact is that the last 4 years have left me so rattled about everything that a little optimism and a little hope is all I can afford. And it's a lot. It's coming from deep down in the well. That little optimism and that little hope. It's come a long way. The truth is, time will tell. We know the result of the election, but we have to wait and see what actually happens next. So many moving parts in this infinite game of Tetris. How does everything keep moving? How do all the pieces stay on the board? We just have to watch. One of the things I've learned in the last while is that every day is a school day. I take nothing for granted, and I expect nothing of the day. I just wait to see what happens. And the truth is, I'm speaking from the heart today. The truth is that well, I always do, but my connections to the world beyond my front door have changed beyond all recognition in recent times. And as is true of so much change, the process was slow for a long time and then neck-snappingly quick. The net result has been that I find myself now living in a world that, well, in so many ways, it looks exactly the same as before. It's populated by the same people as before, or most of them. But that world feels utterly different. how to express it. The matrix was reset with glitches that catch the eye, or a new operating system was installed overnight while I was asleep, complete with troublesome updates. And I find myself in this place that's, well, it is the same, and yet it's most definitely not the same. And I simply don't know how to read it anymore. It confuses the hell out of me. I feel as though I've gone from being, I suppose the analogy I would make is that I've gone from being a fluent reader to one suffering from something akin to dyslexia, so that everything's jumbled before my eyes, and I struggle to make sense. That said, a lot of the change that I've been through, that I'm still going through, has been conscious. It's been enacted deliberately by me, changes I have made. I've abandoned so many old assumptions. I've stopped listening to so much I used to listen to. I've stopped watching so much that I used to watch. And most affecting of all, I've stopped thinking what I used to think. By now, I acknowledge that I've even been through a period of mourning for a lot of what I knew before. And some of it's daft, silly things like TV shows, TV that my family used to watch together, especially when our kids were younger, when they were little, when they were sort of 10, 8 and 6 sort of thing. And Friday and Saturday night telly then was a time to be together in one room, sharing the experience of watching something on the same screen. And all of that is long gone now. And I tell the truth when I say that some of it makes me sad. You what they call terrestrial telly, BBC, ITV, Channel 4 and so on. All of that has gone from our lives as completely as though none of it had ever been. And it's such a little thing, such a trivial thing in so many ways, but nonetheless it registers. And the rise of independent media, new media, is something else that certainly gives me hope, makes me optimistic. Because we wouldn't be where we are today, literally, without those voices calling for freedom. I don't believe that Donald J. Trump would have got his election win, but for the emergent influence of independent media that broke away from the shackles of all that relic legacy lying propaganda. Watching the TV news, as I used to do all my life, the evening news broadcast on one channel or another, it's as much a thing of the past for me as coin-operated telephones on the street and the blurred offerings you used to get from fax machines. There's a lot of music that I can't listen to anymore because the artists responsible, people that I spent years, especially my younger years, admiring, proved one after another that they had, to put it mildly, feet of clay. I can honestly say I felt they let me down personally and badly. Same with the movies. We've got cupboards full of old VHS and DVDs acquired and hoarded over decades and watched dozens of times. Whole swathes of them are left on the shelf now because Hollywood itself is such a colossal letdown too. One so-called star after another stood up and said something unforgivable in the furtherance of and the support of tyranny. I literally cringe when I think about how I admired people that now make my skin crawl with revulsion and contempt. I mean, it was always a challenge to find something to watch of an evening, long before all of that happened, but by now it's nigh on impossible. I read more books, real books now, books made of paper and ink, than I have in years. But I can't believe how it took me as long as it did to shed all this, whatever, metaphorical dead skin. It took me more than 50 years to realise so much that seems completely obvious to me now. So as I say, it's been quite the process. It's a bit like the decluttering that used to be the stuff of the kind of, reality TV show I might have watched 1,000 years ago when my eyes were in so many ways tightly shut. And the process has been and is heartbreaking. There's no denying it. And then you get over it, which I broadly have. It's a bit like the old line that's so overused when it comes to ending a relationship. It's not you, it's me, you say to the person you don't want to be around anymore. What I've realised is that those people that have let me down over the past years, they haven't changed at all. It's important to notice they're just continuing to be who they really are, who they really always were, and that I just didn't notice. These recent years have been a time of profound revelation, and people have simply been revealed for who and what they were all along. As far as I'm concerned, people can't and don't change. It's only their circumstances that do. I can't think of anyone famous or just people that I used to know in private life who I would say has actually changed since 2020. On the contrary, they're exactly the same. Exactly. It's just that now I see them differently. Or maybe I see them clearly, as though for the first time. I've been dropped, shunned, actually, and often publicly, between the pages of newspapers or on social media, by people that in some cases I'd known since, university days. But the truth is they haven't changed a bit, and neither have I. All that's happened, but it's a lot, and it's of the most profound significance when I come to think about it, is that on both sides of what is now an unbridgeable divide, we see each other for who we really are and always were. And equal and opposite, happily into the void, into the vacuum left by those departures from my life, has been drawn a whole new cast of friends. In the case of some, it's people that I knew about before. I'd heard them or watched them in times past, but now they've come properly into focus, as it were, so that I see them. Others are completely new to me, people into whose orbit I've been pulled, or them into mine, by shared concerns. And it's been nothing less than joyous at times. If I had a button to press that would transport me back to the old world of before, when I was blind, I wouldn't touch it in 1,000,000 years or 1,000,000,000 years. The truth is, I wish I might have had more time to see the world as I see it now. But then, as they do say, things happen when they need to and in their allotted time. My refreshed view of the world also has me taking less and less of the superstructure, the architecture, with any kind of seriousness. The state, so-called, is an empty, bad joke. Westminster, Parliament, government, it's a bad joke. The judiciary is a bad joke. The vast majority of politicians are a bad joke. The relic media is a bad joke. Transnational corporations, the BlackRocks, Vanguards, State Street, they're no laughing matter, given how much real power they wield over every aspect of our lives when you get right down to it. But when it comes to their posturing about morality and about how life ought to be lived according to them, they're a bad joke as well. Sometimes, not all of the time, because as I said, I am a glass is half empty kind of a guy, but sometimes the net effect of the past few years fills me with excitement about the potential of it all. But the world has not changed. It's only been revealed, at least to some. And while the world and the people in it haven't changed, the perception of many has undoubtedly been changed, and profoundly. Mine certainly has. I consider it nothing less than a paradigm shift, a leap from one understanding into another. It's not about the old institutions, the old entities that we once depended upon. They're done, finished, like ringed trees dying from the roots up, or leviathans mortally wounded and bleeding out. The future is, of course, going to be made up of many component parts. I'm closely involved, just as a for instance, with that new and independent media that I already mentioned. The old ways of finding out what's going on are dead, or shackled to dying beasts. What matters now, and what will matter more and more, is having the curiosity not to be told what's what, but to discover for ourselves what's what. Access to information has already been altered beyond recognition, and regardless of what the baddies might try, with a view to interrupting the flow, that process of renewal and revolution of information and knowledge is unstoppable. After mourning what has been and gone, must come a lifting up of heads to contemplate what might be there beyond the horizon, what's to come. So, today the question is, what will Donald J. Trump actually do? What will he be able to do, operating as he does in a complicated and dangerous world? So many people have so much riding on his win. Ordinary people, the ordinary people who've been overlooked, set aside, treated with contempt, apparently lined up for some kind of extinction event. Ordinary people are desperate in a way I haven't known before. They're desperate for change. They're desperate to see an end to the wars. They're desperate for peace. Desperate for a reckoning. But also, as Donald Trump has already observed today, desperate for healing. As I said at the top, today is a day for some optimism, for some hope. A day when a little light might be glimpsed. Can Donald Trump bring that healing he talks about? Will his enemies, and his enemies are formidable, will they allow that healing? I say, here's the thing, I say it's too much to ask anyway for any one person to deliver us from evil. That's what I've learned, that it's too much to ask that of others, of any others. Ultimately, it's got to be down to each of us. It's going to be about each one of us as individuals. It's going to be about what each one of us does next.